Hello, I'm Bret and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Ibrahim Naeem. Ibrahim is the Islamic chaplain at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Westwood, California. He's also a member of the Interdenominational Alliance of the San Gabriel Valley. He converted to Islam in 1975. He has a bachelor's degree in telecommunications from Kent State University. He's originally from Ohio and has lived here in California for the last 30 years. Ibrahim is married, he has 3 sons and 5 grandchildren. Ibrahim Naeem, welcome back to The Defining Moment.
Well,
it's really a pleasure to have you back in our studio
it's good
today.
to be back, Bret.
Thanks
you
for
having
coming.
me.
Appreciate it. Our topic today is what is jihad? I'd like to begin by asking the question, what is the meaning of the term jihad?
That's a simple term, very much misunderstood. Jihad means to strive or to struggle. The use of the term is primarily used to talk about the struggle that each of us as human beings have to become our best and higher selves and to struggle with those bad tendencies, those base tendencies that we have as human beings, and to elevate our lives up on the spiritual ladder. The term is also used in regard to the lesser struggle. What I described earlier is called Jihad Akbar, the great jihad. The struggle with self is the greatest jihad. The lesser jihad is to fight in defense, key word, in self-defense of your faith, which means that first your faith has to be attacked, and that then you are permitted to fight in defense of that faith. So jihad is never an aggression. It is always a defense. And it is never about anything except not permitting a people to practice their faith. There's a verse in the Quran that talks about that fighting was ordained, although it was not something that people would want to do. But if you don't do it, then people would pull down churches and mosques and temples and cloisters where righteous people would be to have access to their worship. So it's really about defending faith in the general sense of it, whereas people understand it to be about Islam. It is not. In fact, a Muslim is expected to fight to help you protect your faith also.
Wow, okay, very interesting. Thank you. Does the Holy Quran justify holy war or terrorism?
No, not terrorism. The holy war, let me explain what holy war is, because I was just touching upon it. Holy war, which has been used synonymously with jihad, that connection is simply because the war is holy because you're fighting to protect your faith. And it's not that someone would do something that I don't like. It would be that they would say, Ibrahim, Muslims are no longer permitted to offer their prayers anymore. So it would have to be some way that someone is imposing upon me rules that prohibit me from practicing my faith freely. Okay. Then at that point, I am permitted by the Quran to fight in defense of my faith. Let me read just a verse from the Quran for you. The Quran says in the 2nd chapter, verse 191, it says, "And fight in the cause of Allah against those who fight against you, but do not transgress. Surely Allah loves not the transgressors." So in this verse, you see that fighting in the cause of Allah is something that you're allowed to do, but Muslims are admonished, don't cross the line between your self-defense and aggression. Do not cross that line, because Allah does not love those who transgress. And another verse says, permission to fight. This is the verse that was first revealed to the Prophet Muhammad when he was allowed to fight the first time. And I'll have to give you some history after I read this. Okay. Permission to fight is given to those against whom war is made because they have been wronged, and Allah indeed has power to help them. So this is saying you're being given permission to fight against those who are making war against you. Common sense.
Yeah.
And you're only being allowed to do this because you've been wronged. And of course, God has the power to help you in this struggle. So in order to understand these verses, because people who, I've seen several instances where people, non-Muslims, have taken the Quran and they said, well, what about this verse and what about this verse? But they don't have the historical context to go along with it. One would have to understand that the Prophet Muhammad had been in Mecca after his call to prophethood, preaching for 13 years, suffering every kind of oppression and persecution at the hands of the Meccans. Vicious and cruel oppression. For 13 years, he never raised one finger because God had never told him, you have permission to do this. So he and those who followed him were subjected to all kinds of atrocities. And he had the people, some of his followers, go to Abyssinia, where there was a Christian king who gave them sanctuary, and while others stayed in Mecca. To abbreviate this history lesson, the Prophet had fled Mecca. Him and Abu Bakr fled, and they were being pursued by the Meccans. Miraculously, they escaped them, and he went to Medina to live. The Meccans would not leave him alone. They were committed to the absolute extirpation of Islam and to be done with it. We're going to get rid of those guys once and for all. So even though he had fled and gone away from Mecca, now we're not here preaching in Mecca anymore, we're over here. So please leave us alone. That was not good enough. The Meccans then waged war against him to come over to fight them there. At that point, God gave him the permission to fight, because if he had not given him the permission to fight, they would have been annihilated.
I see.
So this is the context that people need to understand when we talk about jihad.
Okay. Now, in our world today, there is the presence of Islamic extremists. In your opinion, should the Western world fear a kind of holy war from Islamic extremists?
Yes, they should, and I should too. I do too.
Yeah.
You know, because this is a very wrong understanding of Islamic teaching. Unfortunately, this is prevalent among many of the Muslims today, this whole idea, and without getting into a lot of technical discussion about which person has started this kind of philosophy within the body of Islam, it is definitely against true Islamic teaching. Islam is actually a religion of peace and brotherhood. So anytime Islam is being characterized by the actions of Muslims themselves as aggressive, then those people obviously are out of touch with the true spirit and the actual letter of Islam. So those people who characterize themselves as, I don't know that they characterize themselves, but we certainly do, as terrorists, those people who perpetrated the atrocities of 9/11, those people who strap bombs to themselves and blow themselves up and innocent people, these people are misguided. They do not have correct teaching of Islam. And yes, we know that they're serious. They came here to our country and perpetrated this tremendous atrocity and great mischief. And I don't think that they have given up the notion that they can be successful at doing this. So certainly we should be concerned about that. And of course, the real issue is how then do we address that from our perspective. And so that's quite another discussion.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. Why is there so much confusion and misunderstanding about jihad?
You know, there's so much background to these questions. They're very penetrating questions.
Yes.
And there's so much that the average person in the West does not understand. And it's hard for me to pick a point at which to begin to go forward.
Yes.
But let me suggest to you that everything evolves. Every religion has had its evolutionary process. Islam is doing that also, is evolving. Not in any sense of justification, but just to make the point clearer that I was just making. You know, if we look at Christianity, if we go back some years in Christianity, we have the great Salem witch hunt. That was not Christianity at its finest, but it was indeed a Christian act. If we go back further, then you can see that my people, who are Africans, were enslaved and brought to this country and abused for hundreds of years as free labor and considered just to be animals, to be bought and sold. And this was done by good Christian peoples of America and good Christian peoples of Europe. So, you know, each religion has this evolution, and Islam has this particular difficulty right now. I am concerned about it, absolutely. And I think that we should be mindful of the fact that hopefully we will get beyond this. Now, the true teachings of Islam have to be promulgated, and that's the real issue for us. You have Muslims who, we call them mullahs, who are religious clerics, some of whom are not very well educated themselves, who have a stranglehold on Islam in many countries. Their motives are suspect in terms of their benefit from keeping the people ignorant and having them to do their bidding. Now, part of the problem certainly is that many Muslims feel that the West has been quite biased and unfair in how they relate to and treat Muslim countries, particularly as regards the juxtaposition with the Muslim countries and the state of Israel. And so they feel justified that they should do whatever they can to turn the tables. But this again is against Islam. The verse in the Quran comes to me that says, basically, what does it say? It says that we should not let the enmity of another people cause us to act otherwise than with justice. That Muslims should be always just, and that's near to righteousness. And so Muslims have to understand that whatever has been done by others that has been unfair to them, it does not mean that they then can exceed the limit and feel justified because they have been wronged. Only in the sense that their religion is attacked and they are not being permitted to worship as they want to worship. That's the only premise that the Quran gives Muslims for jihad in that sense.
Okay, very clear, thank you. Why are Islamic extremists successfully hijacking the Muslim faith in many parts of the Arab world?
The geopolitical climate, the history of the Islamic countries and how they have been either, colonized by Western powers, exploited by Western powers, and now that they have been freed from that colonization, they are exploited in a different way via petroleum resources. And they feel, of course, when it comes to how Islamic countries are treated and the state of Israel treated? Why are the Palestinians being treated this way and the state of Israel is being treated completely differently? They feel an unevenness in terms of how Western powers perceive and respond to them. And so this has created a sense of anger among the people. And so this gives them, and then to add to that, to see, what's happening in Iraq only adds fuel to the fire in terms of allowing these mullahs again to foment these, to take advantage of these kind of attitudes and to distort the youth's mind toward Western society. So we as Westerners need to be mindful of the policies that we have. I think our policies play a great role in exacerbating a bad situation. Certainly does not justify, as I was saying before, wrong behavior on the part of Muslims. Suicide is not permitted in Islam under any circumstances, but these people are saying, oh no, this is a wonderful thing to do, you'll get a great reward for this. So we have clerics teaching wrong ideas and concepts to the people. And so right now Islam is in a turmoil, and the battle is for the minds and hearts of the people, and that battle will only be won by teaching those people the correct understanding of the Islamic scripture, the Holy Quran.
Okay, I think, that leads me to another question then. What can the West ever hope to achieve that would turn the tide on the wave of thousands of people that are willing to give their lives? So obviously promulgating the true teachings. How can that be done? Well,
I think that's part of what has to happen within the body of Islam. I don't think, no matter who our president is, I don't think that's going to come from the White House. So, but I do think that a more even-handed approach to international affairs will go a long way. I think the average citizen has a role to play in this.
Tell me more about that.
Because we're a democracy. And so if our policies toward any country are uneven and wrong, we have the ultimate vote as to whom we put into office. And so in a democracy, we share part of that responsibility. That, and this happens around the world. A lot of times, countries perceive the United States in a bifurcated manner. One, here's the U.S. policy, and two, there's the U.S. and the people, U.S. people. Well, we don't like the policy of the United States, and we call, I'm saying we being inclusive in the statement, that the United States is called the Great Satan, etc. But the same people will say, well, what do you think about the American people? They say, well, we like the American people. They're okay people. They're nice people, but the policy is wrong. So that kind of perception is a good thing at this point. And I'm concerned that I don't know how much longer we have the luxury of being perceived in that manner, because at some point that perception will change and will say your policy is wrong towards us and cruel towards us, and essentially, since you are in a democracy, you're responsible for that because you voted for these people, and so the policy is wrong. You're in the U.S. is, quote, the Great Satan, and you're all the little ones. And so I don't want that deterioration to occur. I would rather see us become more sophisticated in learning to deal with people based upon principle, that our policies as a country should be based upon principles and not upon expediencies and not upon our own narrow self-interests. I think that will go a long way in addressing some of the issues here.
After September 11th, President Bush said that the reason that we were attacked is because they hate our freedom, that we're a free society, and they hate us for the freedoms that we have. Why is it that Islamic extremists hate us?
I think that they hate what we do. I don't think they hate us. I think, you know, again, if you ask people, do you hate the United States, as they will differentiate between the policies of the United States and the people of the United States. So I don't think they hate us. I think that was an unfortunate perception that he had, and I just beg to differ with him on that point. I don't think they hate us like that. I think any person who feels mistreated and wronged will at some point become reactionary toward the source of that wrong. I think that's exactly what we feel. We're dealing with at this point. And I truly believe that we still have a great opportunity to start to address those issues if we as a nation begin to live up to the principles that we espouse. If we live up to those principles, if we begin to treat people based upon justice and fairness and not upon what, again, our own narrow self-interests are in some great geopolitical chess game, then I think we will come out the victors in this.
Okay, very good, thank you. Do you believe that mainstream Islam is willing and capable to do its part to, in a sense, rein in and re-educate these extremists?
I think yes, yes, and yes. And I think there are movements within the body of Islam now that teach true Islam. I know many people who are Muslims who have very moderate attitudes. In fact, Islam is considered the middle road. This is a teaching of Islam that shouldn't be too far to the left or too far to the right. Islam is the middle road. And so there's a great, great task that remains to be done in the Muslim society and itself, in the Muslim community worldwide itself, in terms of addressing this. I think there are a lot of people who have awakened to this, and I think what has allowed this to happen has been that many Muslims that have migrated or immigrated to this country have done so in fleeing those societies where the mullahs had control, and they were coming to this country as a safe haven. Well, what essentially that did was not present any resistance to those mullahs in those countries to say, no, what you're teaching is wrong, and here is a correct teaching of Islam. So with them having fled to go to Europe or wherever they've gone, the United States, kind of gave the mullahs free rein. And after years of having that free rein, we see the result. Now I think many Muslims of different stripes who have a moderate bent are now looking at what they can do to go back into those societies to help. And I think there's still a lot that we can do.
Okay, and what do you think is the biggest threat represented by Iran and President Ahmadinejad to the United States?
Well, that's hard to speculate. I don't perceive him as a huge threat to the United States. I think he is very bright and very shrewd in terms of positioning himself, but I don't see that. I think that certainly, the question is, are they going to get the bomb? Well, I don't know. But even if they do, will they be attacking the United States with it? Very, very, very unlikely. I don't think they have the capability. I don't think they even have the desire to do that. I think his desire is really to create, to make Iran the dominant player in the Middle East, and to be that country that can then stand up to Israel, and then have all the other Muslims looking up to Iran as the great savior, quote unquote, of the Muslim world. I think that's his desire. I don't know that he'll attain it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. In your view, how should the United States best go about promoting peace in the Arab world?
Treat people fairly. Be a proponent of justice. This is the only real way, and I think there's a simple formula anywhere you go. To be just and to be forthright with people. And I think that will go a long way. In fact, the situation that's in Iraq today would not have been such a disaster as it is right now had, when we went in, we had not been so focused on securing the oil, but rather to get the people's lights back on and some running water and get their industries functioning again so they could go to work and have a decent lifestyle. I think the failure in the Iraq policy was simply, it looks as though we went there, we did all of this to get the oil, because once we got there, the first thing we were, secure the oil fields. And I think if you look back, you see where the first acts of terrorism started to happen. They started blowing up the oil pipelines because it was clear to them, these people didn't come here to liberate us, they came here to steal our oil. That's what they perceived. And so I think, a little more insightful policy and action based upon justice is what we need.
Okay, great. And what message would you like to leave with our viewers today concerning peace and reconciliation between the Arab world and the West?
Well, it's my message is for all humanity, and that is love for all and hatred for none. We're one human family. We live on one little blue planet in this huge, huge universe, and we need to get this right if we're going to continue to exist. So that's my message. Okay.
Well, Ibrahim, Naeem, it's really been a pleasure to have you here as our guest. Thank you so much for being our guest on The Defining
pleasure,
Moment.
Brett.
Appreciate it. God bless you.
God bless you.
Thank you so much. You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thanks for watching and have a great day.